Welcome to episode 2 of this now series, Bariatric Q&A, with yours truly, Chels. I filmed a bariatric question and answer using your questions about 7 months ago. So I thought we could do a second one, and if you like these and have additional questions, we can keep doing these once every few months, because I am finding I'm getting a lot of the same questions in my email, my DMs, and here in the comment section. So I put out a little visual here on YouTube as well as on Instagram and expected to get a few questions, and then I was going to supplement with others that I receive, and instead got a whole bunch. So if you want to see if your question gets answered, stick around. And if you are on that journey and you are looking for even more weight loss surgery content, Disney news, packing, that's coming up in the next month or so, travel tips, mamahood, and magic, please subscribe. I would love it if you would join us in this BariTale community space where we support each other and have fun doing so. I think before we jump into the hot takes, the questions, I need to provide a little bit of background in case this is the first video that you found on my channel. I am Chelsea, a 3.5-year graduate of weight loss surgery. I had the gastric sleeve in 2019. I have maintained almost a 100-pound weight loss since that time. I'm 37, I'm an Aries firstborn, mama of a 7-year-old. I live on Cape Cod, and I think champagne, Disney, and the ocean cure all woes. Welcome. If you are interested in more about my specific weight loss journey, I will leave a video linked here for you, and I have a playlist that I always put in the end cards at the very end of the video. So just stick along, stay with me, and you'll be able to find that playlist with all of the weight loss surgery content on it. Let's get into it. Okay, so these are all going to be along the theme of weight loss surgery, right? So I'm going to try to organize these in like the journey order. We'll see how that goes. How did you decide on the type of gastric surgery you got? I actually filmed a video based on my clinic's information here on Cape Cod, based on the difference in getting the sleeve versus the bypass. There's also the switch, that's an option that I cover very briefly in that video, and I was told a lot of things about how I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do believe that clinics provide different surgeries and different resources, so I will leave that video linked here. Would love to know your thoughts. Anyway, I chose the sleeve. I'm using the word chose in quotes because I wasn't a candidate at the time for bypass 3 years ago. Now I think there's less of a discrepancy between the two surgeries, if possible. And I am not a medical expert, so please take this advice with a grain of salt. If you can start with the sleeve, I think that's typically the best option. For people who have really intense reflux or are starting at a higher weight than I was at the time of my surgery, I was 265 pounds, perhaps a bypass could be a better option, but I like to think long term, and you can always go from a sleeve to a bypass, and then I think from there you can also do a switch, but you can't go backwards. You can't bypass and then come back to a sleeve. So I feel like starting out with the easiest version might be something you want to explore. I know a lot of offices are allowing their clients to choose the type of surgery. Hopefully you are also getting some medical guidance in doing so. I am very happy with my sleeve surgery. I don't know very many people who have chosen a bypass except my mom, but my mom also did her surgery 20 years ago when the bypass was a huge invasive procedure, and I wouldn't have recommended that to anyone unless as an extreme last resort, which is what my mom needed. So that's my 2 cents. I hope it helps. Okay, so now we are moving into the actual day of surgery. This one came from YouTube. I am on the journey to get weight loss surgery and was wondering how coming out of anesthesia was for you, if you can remember. Like, were you in immediate pain? So when I work with my clients and we talk about expectations post-op, this always comes up. Waking up out of anesthesia, I remember being in a small recovery room and immediately this area hurt. I couldn't feel my incisions.
Well, if we're being very honest, this kind of sucks. Ouch, hiccups. I'm less than 24 hours out of surgery. I've been resting a lot and drinking water in medicine cups. I'm supposed to get through 4 of these 8-ounce bottles, and I've had this one since 5:30 this morning, and I'm not done with it yet. So slow going. I did try to eat some soup, promptly barfed her up. There's been some barf, although there's nothing really to throw up. There's been the act of barfing, which is usually just like a lot of trapped gas, because that's the most uncomfortable part. Like, the incision area is sore, and I think can be modified with Tylenol. My morphine pump is gone already. I'm not on any heavy drugs, but the gas part, nothing alleviates that, and it's just like sitting here in my chest. So I've been trying to get up and do some walking by myself and my trusty bag-a-rooney, but that's where we are. So I'm scheduled to go home tomorrow. I don't know how I'm gonna sit in the car and not throw up. I might have to bring a bucket with me. Any type of movement usually makes my stomach go crazy. So that's where we are. Fingers crossed it gets better from here. I'm just trying to be patient, give myself some grace, and go slowly. So that's update number 1 post-surge.
I was warned about this chest pain by a wonderful team of nurses prior to going into surgery, but it was not something we covered in any of my clinicians' courses. So I was surprised to feel such intense pain in my chest. That's from all of the gas that they pump into your stomach during surgery to make surgery easier with the surgeons who are doing it. So I didn't feel that pain in my incision sites at all. I couldn't even tell in that moment that I had incisions in my stomach. And I didn't wake up with nausea. That's the other thing that people complain about waking up with, is that they wake up immediately nauseous. I felt like I took medication prior to waking up to avoid that. Like, that was a part of my surgery. But I did throw up immediately. So they bring in water, they bring in things for you to start sipping, and the first sip went down and then immediately came back up. Now, this might be too much information. I think that's why you're here. I am an easy thrower upper. It doesn't actually bother me as much as I thought it did, especially after talking to other clients and women who are like, the reason I won't have surgery is because I detest throwing up. I hate it so much. The idea of throwing up makes me feel queasy thinking about it. I don't have that. I still continue to throw up. We've talked about my trigger foods, cheeseburgers. I bite too quickly, I get excited, and then within 20 minutes I'm sick. It doesn't happen regularly anymore, or as regularly, but I was a thrower upper post-op. That initial, going back to the gas pain, that pain went away for me within 24 hours. So they do start to wean you down off of like medication, and then that gas finds a way to get out of your body. The best way for you to get it out is to move. And I will tell you, friends, I know I've said it before, we don't trust a fart post-op, okay? If we're going along the lines of gas. I know there are different kinds of gas, but we just don't trust a fart. I'm gonna sneak in like a little part of a bonus question here. On YouTube, a woman asked, is that forever true? Am I always going to need to be near a bathroom? Will I never be able to trust my system again? You get to know your system better over time, but I will say if it feels like something you need to push, don't do it unless you're close to a bathroom. This next question comes from one of my very favorite people. What were your first public challenges in keeping with your bariatric life? How did you manage? So 7 days after my surgery, my family rented a cabin in the mountains of New Hampshire, and I was cleared to go. On this journey, I was on a liquid protein diet, right? My protein shakes, water, and my family was not. And that was one of my first challenges, was outside my own household, being surrounded by all of my favorite things: chocolate chip cookies, fast food, so much Diet Coke and wine, and my only comfort food, sugar-free popsicles. So that was challenge number one. It wasn't necessarily public because I wasn't out in the world yet, but being outside the comfort of my home that I had curated for post-op life, that was challenge number one. Number two was also during this journey, we were doing things like taking walks into town or going on trains. And because I had surgery in July, it was hot. So these trains were open air, but it was very warm inside. There was no air conditioning. We were going on walks to breakfast, and there was a day that we were out on a walk, and I know I was dehydrated because you're taking tiny sips instead of chugging water, which is something I formerly loved doing, and I had to turn around and go back to the house. So the challenges of thinking I could do more than I actually could, that was my first like running up against, okay, you're fresh from post-op, why don't you take it easy a little bit? The other piece was going back to work. Now, I scheduled my summer so that I would have surgery and be able to recover for the second half of July and August, and I went back to school in the fall as a teacher. But I'm not sure anything really prepares you for the energy you need to stand in front of students in a classroom, fellow teachers, I know you hear me, and being on such limited calories at that time was hard. The other piece was eating lunch in such a short amount of time. It's like almost inhumane how short my lunch time is, and that has caused a lot of the throwing up we just mentioned. So what I needed to do, and what I think I did, but just not as strongly as I would do it now, is set boundaries. I may not have gone for the entirety of that vacation, but I didn't want to take time away from my daughter being with my family, her cousins, her grandparents, her aunts and uncles. So perhaps I could have come home earlier, or during daytime adventures, sent my family away and stayed back to relax and read, or simply have driven where we were going. I needed to make it a priority, but I already felt like such an outcast, and I have a supportive external family, even though at the time they didn't understand what I was going through. So I should have set more boundaries around, if you're going to have these foods in this house, do you think you could just keep them out of sight for a little while? But it really is about creating my own boundaries, knowing the reason why I'm doing this, and then sticking to those. With school, it was just about getting back into the swing of things, pacing myself, making sure I'm getting my hydration in, and I probably should have been drinking my protein shakes for lunch rather than for breakfast right away, because lunchtime was so much shorter, and for breakfast, I could wake up earlier and have that more accommodated in my schedule. I hope that helps. Along those same lines, I was asked about how long after weight loss surgery is basically going to a restaurant enjoyable or worthwhile. I think it's probably never going to be worthwhile financially for the exchange of what you're eating. However, I do think it's worthwhile because I don't have to cook or clean up or plan or prep, and I love a great restaurant experience. But I hear you, and going out to eat post-op is pretty disappointing because you order water that you can't drink, because if you're about to eat, you can't have that anyway based on the time limits in between. And then you could order off the kids' menu, but the food is bland, or you could get something you really want. I waited. I did not go out to eat until I think it was September of that year. So it was the end of July, August, September. So it was probably like 2.5 months. And I will tell you that my first dining experience out was delightful. I remember it so specifically because I will forever know this as one of the best meals I've ever had, because the waiting made it worth it. We did a family day in Boston. We ate outside at a restaurant. I ordered a Caesar salad and a singular jumbo shrimp cocktail with cocktail sauce and water, and I ate every bit of that little salad. It's the best Caesar salad I've ever had. I ate every piece of the shrimp that I could, obviously not the tail. It was so good, and it was the perfect amount of food. I was satisfied and not full. I didn't feel awful. It was refreshing because it was a warm day. That meal was so delightful, and it was so small, but so appreciated. I think if you rush it just to feel normal, when you get to the restaurant, you may not find anything on the menu that you think is going to suit you. And 2.5 months is a long time for me not to go out to eat. We are a family who, on the weekends, that's kind of what we do. We like to treat ourselves. So my family would go and I would stay home. My family might do more takeout at that time while I was recovering, but I waited and it was worth it. And now I still love going out to restaurants. It doesn't have to be a special occasion. We went out to breakfast today. So I think it just takes a little time when you are at a soft food phase or a new routine phase where you're comfortable knowing what your body can eat comfortably. What are your protein and water goals each day? Love this question. So practical and tactical. So every day I aim to get around 60 to 70 ounces of water into my body. I could probably stand to increase that a little bit, but it's still a stretch for me to get to the top of 70, to get all 70 ounces in. And I do include my morning protein shake for that. My protein goals of the day are typically between 50 and 60 grams. I have heard clinics say that you should be getting upwards of 90 grams of protein a day. I quite literally cannot put that much in my body, so that's what I aim for. I tend to try to hit the 60. If I can get more than that, great, but usually the 50 to 60 is my reasonable amount. And no, I don't hit that every single day. Someone else asked, do you always hit your protein goals? No, I don't. I'm not perfect. And that's when I feel my body craving protein. Like I'll wake up and know, okay, I need to have a bigger protein breakfast today because my body is telling me you need more protein. Or if I feel extra sluggish, I do supplement with a lot of different vitamins. There is a full-on vitamin routine coming because I am revamping it a little bit right now to fit my modern needs. But 3.5 years later, I am aiming in that 50 to 60. You could be higher than that, but I think after a year, that should be your goal, is like 50 minimum. This next question felt very honest and super relatable. What were your challenges at 3 months specifically? I'm at 3.5 and I'm suddenly having a hard time controlling my eating and eating when I'm not hungry. So for this reason, I started BariTale coaching, because this is a mindset question. There is a misconception that your hunger just poof vanishes post-op. And maybe for a while your hormones are super fluctuating and your body is figuring out if you're dying or not, does your hunger subside? But then around 3 months on average, sometimes before, your hunger returns, that little gremlin in your brain that says, I'm hungry. And you're like, great, I love feeling hungry. It makes me feel super normal. It helps me get on an eating schedule. But with that coming back, that mental piece of I'm not satisfied at the end of my meal also returns. And that's the part that's hard to control, because typically it's in fact not hunger at all. It could be dehydration or thirst, or it could be old habits returning because the work wasn't done pre-op. And I'm not putting blame on anyone who's experiencing that, because we all thrive or not on our daily habits, our default mind setting. Our mindset process controls so much more of our lives than we think it does. So it's not surprising to me that at 3.5 months, when your body is starting to stabilize, that the old cues are returning. What I would recommend you do is journal through when your body tells you you're hungry. Can you differentiate? Is it hunger? Is it a habit? Because for me, I have thresholds. When I walk through the door after school, my brain says, you're hungry, but my stomach isn't. It's a reward for surviving a difficult or challenging day. And I no longer use food as a reward, so I have other coping mechanisms like working out, drinking water, pouring myself into a creative outlet, taking a bath, going for a walk before I get my daughter. All of those help me remind myself that I wasn't hungry to begin with. But you have to fight against those. It's not something that just comes naturally. So I know you can do it. I know you can do it. I did it. I didn't have a coach. You don't necessarily need a coach, but that's why we have post-op support, because that little monster in your brain is going to tell you, oh, you deserve comfort, comfort, comfort. And those are all in the shape of the things we love to eat that don't actually benefit our bodies. On another note, honor your hunger. If the answer to the question, am I hungry, is yes, please eat something, but make sure you're eating protein first. The other 3-month question that I got is about hair loss, because that is real. It's very scary. Does it ever stop? How do you manage it? Does it grow back? My sister is going through this right now too. In fact, today at lunch, she was like, can you feel how thin my hair is? And her hair is very curly, so it looks full, but it feels thin. So some questions for you. Are you getting in enough protein every day? Even if you are, can you increase your protein? Are you taking a biotin supplement or some type of supplement for hair, skin, and nails? How often are you washing your hair? Because if the answer is more than like 3 times a week, you may want to back off and allow some of the natural oil to come through. So the way I managed this was I eliminated for a full year all hair coloring and all heat. I went totally natural with the curly girl routine because I was noticing a lot of hair loss between 3 and 6 months, and it felt like it wouldn't stop. It did. I increased my protein, I increased my hydration, and I have been bouncing from hair supplement to hair supplement ever since. In fact, I have a new one to show you coming up soon. The good news is that it does grow back every time I get my hair cut, and I would recommend on this like healthy hair journey, regular trims to help stimulate growth, and also like scalp massages with specific oils. Like, are you paying attention to your scalp care or just your hair care? So some extra tips there. But every time I go to get my hair trimmed, my hairdresser is like, look at this new growth. And it creates weird little cowlicks all over my head, but there's new growth coming in. And it's 3.5 years later, so it does take time. I've been using a Dyson Airwrap because I got one for Christmas, and that doesn't use ceramic plate heat on your hair. It's just hot air, if that makes sense. So it's supposed to be a little bit healthier, but I am noticing that my hair is much softer. It feels fuller when I'm not using a straightening iron. And perhaps mine is just bad. It's old. I probably need a new one. I would love a Dyson Corral because I love my Airwrap so much, but you can manage your hair loss. Deep breaths. There are external things you can be doing. It's totally normal for it to be falling out right now. Remember, your body has held on to these hormones for 3 months. It now realizes you're not trying to kill this vessel that you call home inside your skin. It's shedding. You are shedding. It will stop, but the less that you can add heat, color, damage, wash it, the better. Just kind of let it be. If you need tips on how to do that, maybe I'm your girl. There's a big chance I'm not, but let me know in the comments below. This one comes from a friend in Australia. Clinical studies on post-bariatric surgery depression raise some concerns for me. I'm wary of the serotonin drop and preparing to be extra vigilant about the potential mood impact. Any thoughts? Because your body is experiencing such intense hormonal changes, there are statistics about how many weight loss surgery patients do end up needing some type of anti-anxiety or antidepressant post-op. This is now considered very normal. So I ended up weaning off my antidepressant when I was post-op, partially because taking it in a crushed way made me gag every single day. I know that sounds dramatic, but it was so disgusting having to like cut the pill and crush it. I couldn't do it, so I looked for a way to get off of it. And I worked with my doctors, and they helped me wean down to like smaller and smaller and smaller quantities until I could go off. That doesn't mean I didn't experience a serotonin drop post-op, but I think because I was already medicated, I didn't feel it as much. If you are not currently medicated, I'm not saying you should be, but if you're not currently medicated and you're interested in what happens afterwards, I would say like, let's start being aware of what that feels like in our body. And I know pre-op that can be hard because we've turned off all of those signals, right? We don't listen to what our body is necessarily telling us. So what might that feel like? Is that something you can keep an eye on with your doctor or have conversations about with your doctor before you have surgery? I have had clients who in their post-op stage are losing tons of weight, feeling awesome, doing everything they need to do, but also realizing that their moods are not as elevated as they used to be. And so they're reaching out to work with therapists, or they are reaching out to ask questions about medication. That's totally normal and encouraged. And remember, it's just a temporary amount of time. And our last question for this video, at least, is what is the best thing to come out of this surgery? Oh, my life is back. I get to be me again, the real me, my confidence, my energy. I feel vibrant, vivacious, and brave. I feel like because I went through this surgery and that I get to be in this body that I work for, not just get to experience it. There are lots of bits here that are jiggly, as you know. I look back at pictures and think, ooh, girl, you could stand to lose 10 to 15 more pounds. I'm okay with that. I'll work on it slowly over the course of the year. But the bravery of going through the surgery and then allowing myself to try new things, getting my mind cleared, to fit space in there for things that I love, not just thinking about my body constantly all the time. I feel like I've gotten to be a better version of who I am. And that is the most I could ask for absolutely anything, including surgery. So that's it. I hope that answers your question. If you would like a bariatric Q&A episode 3, will you give this video a thumbs up so that I know you like it? Friends, we need to wrap this up because the winery is doing a pop-up today. And I would love to bundle up and have a glass of mermaid water. Let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for submitting these questions. These are really fun to answer, and it's kind of like doing a post-op support group, but it's just me and the camera instead of me with beautiful faces. So I appreciate the chance to be your expert in answering these. Thank you so much for being here. Next week, we're doing something out of the ordinary, so make sure you're subscribed. If you don't like it, I'll never do it again, okay? I love you. I hope you are having a magical start to the year. It is the last Sunday of January. All of a sudden, that just means we're closer to springtime. I love, love, love you so much. We will see you next week. Bye, friends.